Welcome to the Wokest Warren, where we have the Wokest Discourse. Today, I want to talk about rights, which I don't believe in. I don't believe in rights at all. But most Americans do. Most Americans think rights are real and think they're important. So I'm going to talk a little bit about rights and how, if you follow the idea of rights to its logical conclusion, you understand that no one can be left behind. If we are all created equal, we are all valuable. The only just thing is to consider all of our needs equally. So there's this thing that happened in American politics back in the 1800s. Women were seeking the right to vote. Now, rights, this is stupid because rights don't really work that way, right? I mean, if you have the right to vote, you have the right to vote. No one can take that away from you. That's the idea. No one can take your rights away from you. Well, obviously, that's not true. So in 1848, the women's suffragists in the United States had a convention, and they were looking at freedom and slavery. And they were like, you know what? We deserve the right to vote. We should vote. So we think that Black people who are equal to us should also vote. So things were getting really, really hot with abolition. And the suffragists, for the most part, were abolitionists. They sought to end slavery in the United States. So in 1848, they had a convention, and they decided not to push for the woman's right to vote in the United States because they felt that the needs of African American people for freedom were ascendant. And the attitude was, okay, let's stop working on women's rights for a minute. And we will start working on rights for African Americans. So that's what happened. And most people only hear that part of the story. I know in high school when I took American history class, that's what we learned. So I was a little skeptical later on, a few years ago, when I learned that the white women had all turned on the Black men and said, you don't deserve the right to vote before us. We need the vote first. So what ended up happening was that, in fact, African American men were enfranchised and they were given the right to vote, and white women were not. And so white women came back with this barrage of racism and said that Black men were too stupid and uneducated, shouldn't be voting, because white women were superior to Black men. And it was so extreme that Susan B. Anthony asked Frederick Douglass not to attend the women's suffrage convention in Atlanta because she thought it was more important to garner support from the white racists for women's rights, and feared that having a Black speaker at the convention would turn off the racists, and the racists wouldn't want to support women's rights. So I'm watching this documentary about this on PBS. It's called something like Women Get the Right to Vote, okay? And I'm thinking about how I have experienced this. Even I have experienced this in real life, and I have experienced this locally. I cannot tell you how evil and subtle the suggestions are for activists in our community to abandon the Palestinian cause, the cause of Palestinian liberation. Because there are racists that are specifically referred to as Zionists. A Zionist is a specific type of racist that thinks that the area, the land of Palestine, is given to the Jewish people who are God's chosen people and therefore superior to everyone else. Okay, so they're Jewish supremacists. So there is no question how racist Zionists are. That isn't even up for discussion. Zionists fully admit that they are big-time racists because they think that God prefers them. Now, I mean, this is why I was an atheist, to tell you the truth. This is why I was an atheist for so many years. Because I find the idea that God would prefer one person over another person to be morally repugnant. And that's because I grew up in American culture. I was born in the 1970s, where Americans felt that equality was something very important to champion. So I believe in equality. And when people go around saying that God likes them better, the first thing I go to is like, well, if that's what God is, I don't believe in that. So for much of my adult life, I just didn't believe that God existed. Because what people told me about God was so fucked up. I just was like, even if this mythological creature does exist, I refuse to recognize him. Because that's bullshit. People are equal.